Welcome to the 20th episode of our show, The Second Sex.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really digging into a crucial part of Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex.
Yep.
We're going to be focusing on Chapter 7 of Part 2, Situation. It's titled Social Life. And we're looking specifically at pages 649 through 679.
Right. And in this section, Beauvoir really takes a microscope to the everyday realities of women's lives, well, back in the mid-20th century. She's examining how societal structures, which were, largely shaped by men, how they dictate women's experiences and, frankly, limit their horizons.
So our goal today is kind of to pull out Beauvoir's most powerful insights, right? About how society constructs this whole idea of womanhood.
Exactly, and what that meant for women on a practical, day-to-day level back then. We'll be looking at her philosophical arguments, of course, but always trying to connect it back to the real-world implications she observed.
Okay, let's dive right into what Beauvoir sees as like a cornerstone of a woman's expected life, marriage.
Oh, yes, marriage.
It's almost presented as the default setting, isn't it?
That's right. Beauvoir really highlights the immense societal pressure on women to marry, to see it as their primary aim and, the key to fulfillment.
It wasn't just a personal choice.
No, not at all. It was just woven into the fabric of social expectation.
But then she throws in this really thought-provoking idea, this contrast between the promise of marital bliss and, well, the potential for a life of just routine and restriction. It really makes you stop and think.
It does. And what's fascinating here is Beauvoir's observation that while a young woman's life before marriage is often full of new experiences, possibilities,
Right.
marriage itself can often signal a narrowing of those horizons.
Yeah.
It can become, a world of repetition where the exciting possibilities of youth just seem to fade.
It's like those early years or this period of growth and discovery, and then marriage can just sort of slam the brakes on that.
Yeah.
And she uses this really vivid analogy, Sisyphus, endlessly pushing the boulder uphill.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
To describe the often thankless and repetitive nature of housework and that constant devotion within marriage.
That image really sticks with you, doesn't it?
It really does.
Beauvoir uses it to illustrate how domestic labor can feel like this never-ending cycle. Tasks that lack any real sense of lasting
You
accomplishment.
just do it all over again the next day.
Exactly. You clean, you tidy, you care for others, and then boom, next day start all over again. And, this resonates even today.
True.
Despite advancements, women still disproportionately shoulder domestic labor. So Beauvoir's insight isn't just like a historical observation. It highlights a persistent societal thing, this devaluation of unpaid care work.
And the expectations placed on wives by their husbands,
Wow,
they sound almost impossible to meet.
completely.
They're supposed to be completely devoted, but also, what was it, weightless? Effortless?
Yeah, weightless, effortless, a source of stability, but also completely understanding of their husband's need for freedom.
Always there, but never nagging.
Right. It's a real tightrope walk. And this brings up a crucial point about the inherent power imbalances in traditional marriages, as Beauvoir saw them. She points out how husbands often desire a wife who is entirely dedicated to their needs, their well-being, providing constant support without making demands on their own independence or time.
It's like wanting complete availability combined with this kind of unobtrusive, almost invisible presence.
Precisely.
She even brings in that Sophia Tolstoy quote, I live through him, and for him, I demand the same thing for me.
Yes, that's the one.
And then Beauvoir just kind of cuts through it, highlighting how that demand for reciprocity often falls flat in a society where the scales are already tipped.
Exactly. Beauvoir challenges the idea of a truly equal exchange within marriage when the broader societal framework just doesn't value the contributions and experiences of women in the same way it values men's.
So Tolstoy's desire is the ideal, but Beauvoir's saying the structure didn't allow for it.
Pretty much. She questions whether the structure of marriage, as it existed then, truly allowed for that kind of balance.
And it's interesting, it's not just Beauvoir pointing this out. She references D.H. Lawrence's idea that marriage needs two independent people.
Right. Two autonomous existences, I think he said.
Yeah, and Nora's realization in Ibsen's A Doll's House that she has to be her own person first before being a wife and mother. These ideas were clearly, in the air.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Beauvoir is part of this larger intellectual shift, really questioning the foundations of traditional marriage.
Moving away from marriage as the be-all and end-all.
Exactly. The emphasis is shifting towards recognizing the importance of individual autonomy, self-realization for both partners.
Yeah.
Beauvoir suggests, Only when individuals are secure in their own identities can they form truly generous, equitable relationships based on mutual freedom.
Okay, so having looked at marriage, Beauvoir then turns to social life and appearances. And it feels like a woman's interactions outside the home become another kind of stage where she's trying to find validation through these prescribed roles, the perfect hostess, the devoted wife.
The doting mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's striking here is how Beauvoir argues that society actively pushes women to define themselves, even, limit themselves, through their image and these very specific social roles.
So their sense of worth gets tied up in how well they perform.
Exactly. In the eyes of others.
And clothing plays a huge role in this performance, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
She draws this sharp contrast between men's clothing, designed for action, conveying competence, almost transcendence,
Right, transcendence. Moving beyond the immediate.
versus women's fashion, which seems primarily focused on presenting them as, well, objects of desire for men, often at the cost of practicality or their own ambitions.
Precisely. Beauvoir points out how women's fashion, with its emphasis on impracticality and aesthetic appeal aimed at attracting male attention, can inadvertently restrict their freedom and mobility.
Literally and figuratively.
Both, yes. It keeps them focused on being seen rather than on doing.
And she notes this cyclical, almost ritualistic nature of fashion, how women adorn themselves almost like nature itself, offering themselves up to be looked at, admired. It's a very passive role, isn't it?
It is. Beauvoir links this to a kind of learned passivity, where a woman's self-esteem becomes wrapped up in being the object of someone else's gaze, predominantly the male gaze.
A performance of femininity.
Yeah, a performance that often prioritizes outward appearance over inner substance or, personal agency.
This leads her to this really interesting connection she makes between narcissism and masochism in women,
Right, that's a complex point.
where their sense of self is so dependent on external validation that they might even seek negative attention just to feel noticed, which Beauvoir argues can unfortunately sort of manifest as masochism.
Beauvoir suggests that when a woman's identity is primarily constructed through others' perceptions, particularly men's, she can develop this tendency, seeking validation even through self-denial or accepting objectification.
So the desire for male admiration becomes central.
So central that it can unfortunately override a healthy sense of self-worth.
Then she talks about this almost contradictory dynamic. Women being attracted to a fascinating man, but then pulling back if he shows too much genuine emotion, because then he becomes commonplace.
Yeah, it's like they prefer the unattainable ideal sometimes.
Why is that?
Well, she suggests this highlights a complex psychological dynamic. The allure of the fascinating man often lies in his perceived distance, his inaccessibility.
Oh, okay.
So once he reciprocates intensely, he loses that mystique. Becomes just another man challenging the idealized image the woman projected onto him.
And this whole idea of girls developing crushes on unavailable friends, boyfriends, married men, Beauvoir suggests it might be tied to an underlying, maybe subconscious desire for failure.
Right, as a way to avoid the risks.
The risks and complexities of a real committed relationship. That's a pretty sharp insight into, well, human behavior.
It is. Beauvoir posits that choosing an unattainable love object can serve as a subconscious way for some women to avoid the vulnerability and potential disappointment of genuine intimacy.
The impossibility is kind of a safety net.
Exactly, a built-in safety net, preventing the need for true emotional engagement.
But she does offer a more hopeful perspective,
Right.
looking at characters in Russ von Lehmann's novels.
Yes, she sees them showing this capacity for openness and generosity in relationships without sacrificing their own sense of self.
It's a welcome contrast.
Absolutely. Beauvoir acknowledges that some young women exhibit this remarkable ability to be loving, receptive, while still maintaining a strong sense of their own identity, their independence. They offer a model of connection that isn't based on self-abnegation,
But on mutual respect.
mutual respect, and genuine exchange.
Okay, moving on to the lesbian. Beauvoir frames this, at least in part, as a rejection of men, often arising from feelings like disgust, resentment, shyness, or maybe even a sense of pride in choosing a different path.
What's interesting is Beauvoir's exploration of how lesbianism can be understood within the context of a patriarchal society.
Right.
She suggests that for some women, attraction to other women can be linked to a rejection of those traditional power dynamics, the limitations inherent in heterosexual relationships back then.
She mentions this potential combination, feeling inferior to men in a male-dominated world, while also resenting the power men hold over women. That's a complex emotional landscape.
It really is. Beauvoir suggests that some lesbians may simultaneously experience a sense of inadequacy compared to men within that male-centered society, while also harboring resentment towards the control men exert over women's lives.
And these intertwined feelings can contribute to preferring relationships with women.
That's her analysis, yes.
And the idea of lesbians seeing themselves as rivals to men in terms of attraction, connection, and actively disliking men's dominance over women, that really highlights a conscious resistance, doesn't it?
Exactly, a resistance to traditional gender roles. Beauvoir emphasizes how some lesbians actively challenge and subvert traditional heterosexual norms
Ow.
by viewing themselves as equally capable of desire and connection, and by rejecting the power imbalance they perceive in male-female relationships.
She also touches on these, well, stereotypical traits sometimes associated with lesbians liking traditionally masculine things like hard liquor or rough language,
Yeah, she mentions those.
almost as a way to further distinguish themselves from conventional femininity.
Beauvoir observes how some lesbians might adopt certain behaviors or preferences traditionally associated with masculinity, maybe as a way to further differentiate themselves from societal expectations of femininity, perhaps assert a sense of strength, independence.
And she points out that the relationship lesbians have with men is often complicated, noting that only women who feel very secure in their own masculinity, as she puts it, might have mostly male friends.
Right, which suggests a certain level of comfort outside traditional gender boundaries.
hmm Beauvoir highlights the nuanced and varied relationships lesbians can have with men. Only those who possess a strong sense of their own masculine identified traits might feel comfortable primarily in male company. It suggests a level of self-assurance that transcends conventional gender norms.
Then she discusses how even within the lesbian community there can be complex and sometimes negative attitudes, including scorn and feelings of inferiority among very masculine homosexual women towards other women.
So internal struggles can exist within any identity group.
Yes, Beauvoir acknowledges that.
Yeah.
Even within the lesbian community, there can be internal complexities, conflicting feelings,
Yeah.
possibly stemming from internalized societal norms and expectations around gender and sexuality.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Beauvoir examines the courtesan and the actress.
Ah, yes, interesting categories.
And it's interesting how she sees them as achieving a certain kind of independence, even if it comes with, societal disapproval. For the courtesan, it's through economic self-sufficiency.
Right. What's significant here is Beauvoir's recognition of how financial independence, even when gained through a socially condemned profession, could provide a woman with a degree of freedom from male control, a freedom largely unavailable to most women at the time.
And the actress gains a different kind of freedom through her artistic expression. It's like their work becomes a way to step outside the usual constraints.
Exactly. Beauvoir sees artistic professions like acting as offering this unique pathway for women to achieve independence and self-expression. Their work provides not only economic support, but also a platform for personal fulfillment that goes beyond the limitations of traditional female roles.
She even mentions how, paradoxically, the church's condemnation of actresses in the past might have actually given them more freedom.
Yeah, by placing them outside the bounds of respectable society. That's a surprising twist, isn't it?
It is.
Beauvoir suggests that the very social ostracization faced by actresses inadvertently created this space for them outside the strictures of conventional society, allowing for greater behavioral freedom compared to women confined to more socially accepted roles.
And for actresses, Beauvoir argues, their professional success actually enhances their perceived sexual worth.
Right, aligning their personal and professional aspirations in a way that was rare for women in other fields.
So it's about their achievements making them more desirable.
This is a key point. For actresses, success in their profession contributes to their desirability, their status, blurring that traditional separation between public and private lives. Their achievements as individuals enhance their perceived worth as women, a dynamic often reversed for women in other professions back then.
Beauvoir also mentions Georgette Leblanc's idea, performance sometimes being a substitute for real action for women obsessed with their image.
But she holds out hope for great actresses to transcend this.
To become true artists.
Exactly, the difference between mere display and genuine creative expression. Beauvoir draws a distinction between superficial exhibitionism, driven by vanity, and the transformative power of authentic artistic expression.
So while some might use performance as a substitute,
Great actresses can move beyond this, imbuing their roles with genuine artistry and contributing meaningfully to the world of art.
Okay, next. Beauvoir turns to the woman in religion.
Right.
And she suggests that historically, religion has served as a kind of consolation prize, offering a sense of spiritual transcendence to women confined to a more limited earthly existence.
That's a good way to put it. Beauvoir argues that religion has often functioned as a way to pacify women denied agency and fulfillment in the secular world. By offering the promise of spiritual transcendence, it can distract from real-world inequalities and limitations.
And the idea that God endorsing male-created rules just reinforces male authority over women, that's a pretty direct critique, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A critique of the patriarchal foundations of many religious systems. Beauvoir highlights how religious doctrines that establish male dominance as divinely ordained serve to legitimize and perpetuate patriarchal power structures within society.
In modern society, she says religion often acts more as a mystification,
Yeah, mystification.
offering a belief in spiritual equality as a way to downplay very real inequalities in the earthly realm.
It's like a promise of fairness in the next life to compensate for injustice in this one. That's Beauvoir's suggestion, that in contemporary society, religion often operates by promising spiritual equality in the afterlife, thereby diverting attention from the persistent inequalities women face in their everyday lives.
And she observes why young girls and adolescents might embrace religious devotion more intensely than boys.
Yes, finding comfort and a sense of importance in the idea of being seen and valued by God.
It can be a source of validation they might not find elsewhere.
It's exactly. Beauvoir notes that for young girls, religious devotion can provide a sense of significance and purpose, a feeling of being seen and valued by a higher power, which can be particularly appealing when they feel marginalized or overlooked in the secular world.
But she does point to the virile steadfastness, her words, found in some great female saints who even challenged male authority within the church.
Right, so it's not a completely one-sided picture of female passivity.
No.
Beauvoir acknowledges that there have been exceptional female figures within religious traditions who've demonstrated remarkable strength, even challenged established male authority, highlighting instances where women have carved out positions of power and influence within the religious sphere.
Still, she concludes that the church generally makes sure God doesn't authorize women to escape male control. It seems like the underlying power structure tends to remain.
Ultimately, that's Beauvoir's argument, that despite the examples of powerful female saints, religious institutions have generally maintained doctrines and practices that reinforce male authority and ensure women remain within a framework of male oversight.
Okay, finally, Beauvoir delves into solitude.
Ah, solitude.
And she examines the different forms it can take for women, the imposed isolation of the home, the chosen solitude for reflection, and the devastating solitude of abandonment.
Right. Beauvoir explores this multifaceted experience of solitude for women, highlighting how it can range from restrictive confinement within the domestic sphere to a deliberate choice for introspection, and ultimately to the profound isolation that can result from abandonment.
The isolating effect of being confined to the home, yearning for connection with the outside world, that's something that probably resonates with many people even today.
Oh, definitely. Beauvoir poignantly describes the sense of isolation and confinement that women can experience when their world is limited to the domestic realm, leading to a yearning for broader engagement, connection with the wider world.
And the situation of the abandoned woman who has poured her entire being into a relationship, facing this crushing devastation and the potential inability to rebuild her life or love again. That's a really stark portrayal of vulnerability.
It is. And the risk of complete dependence. Beauvoir emphasizes the precarious position of women who have invested their entire identity, their emotional life in a relationship, particularly when that relationship ends. The loss can be catastrophic.
Leaving them feeling utterly adrift.
Adrift, questioning their ability to ever connect deeply again.
But she contrasts this with women like Heloise and Colette's heroines.
Yes, women who possess an inner strength that allows them to overcome heartbreak and find their own path. It highlights the importance of inner resources.
Right. Beauvoir offers examples of women who, despite experiencing heartbreak and loss, possess a strong sense of self, inner resources that enable them to rebuild their lives and find fulfillment independently.
It really underscores the importance of a woman having an autonomous existence beyond romantic relationships.
She ends this section by really emphasizing the danger of completely entrusting oneself to another person.
It's a powerful reminder.
About the importance of maintaining your own sense of self.
Absolutely. Beauvoir's final point in this section serves as a cautionary note about the risks of complete dependence in any relationship.
Yeah.
True fulfillment, Resilience requires maintaining a strong sense of individual identity and not, relinquishing one's entire being to another person.
So, okay, let's try to bring it all together. In this deep dive into pages 649 to 679 of The Second Sex, we've seen Beauvoir meticulously dissect how societal expectations around marriage, appearances, can limit women.
Right. And how professions like courtesanship and acting offered alternative paths, albeit sometimes stigmatized ones.
We looked at how religion could both confine and, in rare cases, offer a platform for female agency.
And finally, the complexities of solitude and the vital importance of self-reliance.
What really stands out, I think, is Beauvoir's sharp analysis of the societal forces that have shaped women's experiences within social structures traditionally defined by men.
Definitely. So you, the listener, now hopefully have a deeper understanding of her core arguments concerning the social construction of womanhood during the mid-20th century and its far-reaching implications.
And that brings us to our final thought for you. Considering Beauvoir's analysis of social expectations and the construction of womanhood from this section, how do you see these dynamics continuing to play out or maybe evolving in our society today?
Yeah, what aspects of her observations still feel relevant? And where have we seen significant changes in the social landscape of gender since the mid-20th century?
Lots to think about there.
We encourage you to reflect on these questions and maybe to explore the second sex further. Beauvoir's insights continue to provide a really powerful lens through which to understand gender, society, and the ongoing journey toward equality.